You are almost asleep. Your body has gone heavy. The room is gone. Whatever you were thinking about has dissolved into something that isn't quite a thought anymore. And then you fall. Not in a dream, not metaphorically. Your whole body convulses, one violent kick, and you are suddenly completely awake, heart hammering, staring at the ceiling, absolutely certain that a half second ago you were plummeting through empty space. There was no space. You were in bed. You never moved. So what exactly just threw you off a cliff?
Around 70% of people have felt this. About 1 in 10 feel it every single night. It has a name, a hypnic jerk, or a sleep start, and it was described in the medical literature back in 1890. And for more than a century, nobody has been able to fully explain it. You'll find an answer online. It's a good answer. It's poetic, it's evolutionary, it involves falling out of trees. And I'm going to tell you right now that it is a hypothesis, not a fact, and that it fails to explain the strangest part of what happens to you. Because a muscle twitch is a muscle twitch. It doesn't explain the flash of light. It doesn't explain the sound you heard that nobody made. The real answer is that for a few seconds every night, you are asleep and awake at the same time. And the jerk is the only moment you ever notice. Let's start with what actually happens, because most people misremember it. A hypnic jerk is a myoclonic contraction, a sudden, brief, involuntary firing of muscles, usually in the legs, sometimes the arms, sometimes the whole body at once. Physically, it looks almost identical to a startle response. The jump you'd do if someone slammed a door behind you. Fine, muscles fire, not that weird. Except that's not all that happens. Ask people what they actually experienced, and the descriptions get strange fast. There's the falling sensation, obviously, the feeling of dropping into a void, of missing a step on a staircase that isn't there. But alongside it, people report a flash of light, a bright, sudden visual burst behind closed eyes. They report a sound, a bang, a crack, a shout, loud enough to be startling, and completely non-existent. They report a racing heart, quickened breathing, sweat, and some of them report a dream, a tiny, compressed fragment of a dream in which they were falling, that somehow arrived in the split second before the twitch, as if the dream came first and the body was reacting to it. Now hold on, a misfiring muscle does not produce a flash of light. A leg spasm does not generate a sound in your head. A twitch in your calf has no mechanism, none, for writing a miniature dream about falling and slotting it into your consciousness milliseconds before it happens. Whatever a hypnic jerk is, it is not happening in your muscles. It's happening upstream, in the brain, and the muscles are just the part you can see. Which means the question isn't, why did my leg twitch? The question is, what is going on inside my skull that produces a twitch, a hallucination of light, a hallucination of sound, and a hallucination of falling all at once, and all in the wrong order? Okay, so here's the answer you've probably heard. It goes like this. Millions of years ago, our ancestors slept in trees, and sleeping in a tree has one very obvious design flaw: gravity. If your muscles fully relax while you're perched on a branch, you fall out of the tree, and the ground solves the problem of your continued existence. So the story goes, evolution installed a safety check. As you drift off, your brain monitors your muscle tone, and when it detects that sudden loss of tension, it misreads it. It thinks, we are falling, and it fires every muscle at once to make you grab the branch. The jerk is an ancient reflex, a ghost of a body that doesn't live in trees anymore, still trying to save you from a fall that can't happen. I love this explanation. It's elegant, it's evocative, and it feels true. And I have to be honest with you, because this is exactly where most videos about this topic stop, and where they start lying to you by omission. It's a hypothesis. That's it. It was proposed by a researcher at the University of Colorado. It is a suggestion. It has not been demonstrated. There is no experiment confirming it, no fossil evidence, no smoking gun. It gets repeated across the internet with the confidence of established fact, and it simply isn't one. And here's the part that actually bothers me about it. Even if it's true, it doesn't explain the flash of light. It doesn't explain the phantom sound. It doesn't explain why a dream about falling arrives before the muscles move. The tree hypothesis explains a twitch, but a twitch is the least interesting thing that happens to you, and any explanation that only covers the boring part is an explanation you you should be suspicious of. So let's throw it out. Not because it's wrong, it might be partly right, but because it's not enough. And let's ask what's actually happening when you fall asleep, because that turns out to be much stranger than a tree. Here's what you probably think falling asleep is. You think it's a dimmer switch, consciousness slowly fading down, a smooth ramp from awake to asleep, like the lights going down in the theater. That is not how it works, not even slightly. Your brain has two opposing systems and they are at war with each other. One is the arousal system, a network running up through the brainstem, keeping you awake, keeping you alert, keeping the lights on. The other is a sleep promoting system, centered in the hypothalamus, whose entire job is to shut the first one down. And here's the crucial part. They inhibit each other. When one is active, it actively suppresses the other. When the sleep side gains strength, it clamps down on the wake side. When the wake side is winning, it clamps down on the sleep side. Neuroscientists have a name for this architecture. They call it a flip-flop switch. It was described by Clifford Saper and his colleagues, and the logic of it is genuinely beautiful. A system built on mutual inhibition doesn't have a middle. It can't sit halfway. The moment one side gets even a slight advantage, it suppresses its opponent, which weakens the opponent, which lets it suppress harder, and the whole thing snaps all at once into one state or the other, awake or asleep, nothing in between. And that's deliberate. That's the point of the design. You do not want to spend 40 minutes hovering in a half-conscious limbo where you can't move but can't dream either. An animal that lingers in the doorway between sleep and wakefulness is an animal that gets eaten. So evolution built a switch that snaps. We even know what happens when it breaks. There's a neuropeptide called orexin whose job is to stabilize this switch, to hold it firmly in place. In narcolepsy, the orexin system is damaged, and narcoleptics can't hold a state. They collapse into sleep mid-conversation. The switch flutters. So, a hard switch, held stable, snapping cleanly between two states. Great, except that's still not the whole truth. And the part that's missing is the part that explains everything. Because it isn't one switch. The clean picture, one master switch flipping the entire brain from on to off turns out to be too simple. And the more carefully sleep researchers looked, the more the master switch fell apart in their hands. What they found instead is that sleep may be a local property, not a global state the whole brain enters at once, but something that individual populations of neurons can do, semi-independently, which means that at any given moment during the transition, some regions of your brain can be in a sleep state while other regions are still in a wake state. Read that again because it is not a figure of speech. Parts of you are asleep, parts of you are awake, at the same time, in the same skull, right now, every night on your way down. Falling asleep isn't a switch being flipped, it's an avalanche of switches, thousands of them, cascading, and they do not all go at once. There's a window, a gap, a few seconds long where the cascade is halfway through. And in that gap, your brain is not one thing. It's a committee, and the committee is not in agreement. Now put the pieces together. Your brainstem is doing its job. It's sending the signal down your spinal cord. Shut down the muscles, drop the tension, we're going offline. That's a normal, healthy part of falling asleep. It happens every night. But your cortex, the part of you that watches, that interprets, that builds your experience of the world, hasn't fully gone under yet. It's still awake enough to be paying attention. So it detects it. It detects the sudden total loss of muscle tone. And it has to explain it. And with the sensory world already fading, with almost nothing left to work with, it reaches for the only interpretation that fits a body suddenly going weightless and limp. You are falling. The alarm goes off. Every muscle fires at once, and you wake up on a cliff edge that does not exist. But we still haven't explained the flash of light, or the sound. And this is my favorite part, because this is where it stops being neurology and starts being genuinely eerie. Think about what's happening in that gap. Some of your brain is entering sleep. And what does a brain do in sleep? It generates. It builds imagery out of nothing. It manufactures sound with no ears involved. It constructs entire worlds from an empty room. That's not a malfunction. That is the standard, nightly, unremarkable operation of a sleeping brain. You just aren't normally there for the beginning of it. But in the gap, you are. The regions that generate dream imagery have started up, and the regions that produce conscious awareness haven't shut down yet, which means the machinery of the dream is running, and someone is still in the room, watching it boot. The flash of light is not a malfunction. It is the first frame of a dream, and you caught it awake. The sound with no source is not a hallucination in the pathological sense. It is a dream's audio track, starting up, in a mind that hasn't finished going to sleep. And the tiny falling dream, the one that arrives impossibly before the twitch, makes sense now too. Because the cortex builds its explanation first, and the body reacts second. The dream isn't a memory of the jerk. The dream is the reason for the jerk. You are watching your own brain begin to dream from the inside while still conscious enough to remember it. For maybe half a second, every single night, you are a witness to something you were never supposed to see. The exact moment your own consciousness starts to come apart. Now, one last thing, and it's the practical one. Some people get these constantly, some people barely ever notice them, and the difference tells you something. Caffeine makes them worse, nicotine makes them worse, stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, exercising too close to bed, some antidepressants, all associated with more frequent, more violent hypnic jerks. At first glance, those look like a random grab bag. They're not. They have one thing in common. Every single one of them is something that makes your arousal system fight back. Remember the design. The switch snaps clean when one side clearly wins. But if you've poured caffeine into your arousal system, if your stress response is running hot, if you're wired and exhausted at the same time, then the wake side doesn't lose gracefully. It resists. It hangs on. The cascade stalls out halfway, and a longer gap means a wider window in which half your brain is asleep and half is awake, screaming at each other about whether or not you are currently falling out of a tree. So the mechanism has a cruel little joke built into it. The harder you fight to stay awake, the more violently your brain throws you back out of sleep. And the more desperate you are to finally fall asleep, lying there tense, willing it to happen, the more you keep your arousal system switched on, and the more likely you are to be kicked back into consciousness by your own body. The jerk isn't a bug in the system. It's what the system looks like when you refuse to let it work. So, back to you, on the ceiling side of that cliff, heart pounding, having just been thrown out of a fall that never happened. Here's what actually just occurred. Your brainstem cut power to your muscles, exactly as it does every night. But this time, part of your mind was still awake to feel it go. Somewhere else in your skull, a dream had already started rendering, a flash, a sound, a plunge, and a cortex with almost no information left, trying to explain a body that had suddenly gone weightless, arrived at the only conclusion available. You were falling. And it saved you. From nothing. Here's the part that stays with me. Every night of your life, you pass through a state that has no good name. Not awake, not asleep. A few seconds where your brain is genuinely, measurably both. Where some of you has already gone under, and some of you is still standing on the shore. You go there every single night. You have been going there your entire life. And you almost never remember it, because remembering requires the very thing that is in the process of switching off. The hypnic jerk is a glitch in that forgetting. It's an alarm that goes off occasionally in a room you're not supposed to be conscious in, and for 1/2 second you get to stand in the doorway between being someone and being no one, and actually see it. Most nights you cross that gap and it takes you with no witness at all. Tonight, when you feel yourself start to fall, that's you, watching yourself disappear.